Evelyn Carter ran with the rain, not against it, soaked sweater pressed to her ribs as the street pulsed with sirens somewhere off to the south. A battered radio on a convenience store shelf sputtered through static. Then a clear, bright whistle cut the night. 3 notes dropped. 1 rose, 5 in a weave that drilled into her chest like a cold nail. She stopped dead in the doorway, grabbing the frame as her breath went sideways. She saw the knife, not the blade, but the dull line of it. She remembered the smell of plastic and rainwater. She saw a hand, a left hand, guiding her jaw and pushing her down, a small tattoo at the base of the thumb, a metronome inked in fine black lines. The clerk shouted for her to sit. Evelyn shook her head and ran again. She crossed behind a bus as the rain hammered the roof, knocked through puddles as if she could outrun the song. She could not. The whistle curled out from the radio again, a cheerful melody broadcast like a joke at her expense. Panic made the sidewalk narrow. Detective James Harrington stepped from an unmarked sedan with the weariness of a man who had slept in the same coat for 30 years. He was 62, ex-Marine, tall and square, with eyes that measured the angles of danger the way a carpenter checks corners. Detective Linda Roberts arrived at his shoulder, 55, steady in the storm, her hands inside nitrile gloves even before she closed her car door. The call had been urgent. Female caller, survivor, memory triggered by a song. "You take the storefront," James said. "I will take Evelyn," Linda said. They split without further chatter. Harrington reached the counter, flashed his badge, listened to a shaky clerk point at the radio as if it were a weapon. The whistle returned. Harrington leaned in close, head tilted. He had a decent ear for trouble. The tune made his teeth grind. It was too clean. It was practiced. "He needs to hear this," the clerk said. "The woman lost it when that came on." "Where is she?" Harrington said. Outside, Linda found Evelyn under a half-dead awning, knuckles white on a payphone as if 1992 had never ended. Linda stepped in front of her, steady and calm. "You are safe," Linda said. "You called us." "I am Linda. This is Detective Harrington. We are here." "He said he would sing," Evelyn said. But it was not singing. It was this, that whistle. She shuddered and pressed a hand to her throat. Harrington took off his coat and draped it across her shoulders. She did not refuse. Tiny gesture, easy to miss, but it anchored her. He nodded to the radio inside and the clerk turned it down. "Tell me what came back," Harrington said. "He had a hand like a worker," Evelyn said. "Thick palm, and that tattoo, a little metronome at the base of his thumb. He whistled when he hurt me like he could not help himself." "That song on the radio is the same." Harrington looked at Linda. Linda gave the smallest nod. They both knew the stakes. If the song matched their ghost, the man who had been killing over 2 years had returned to his own melody. The press called him the Whistler. The department called him a headache and a wound. He was organized, careful, and cruel. "We are going to take you to the precinct," Linda said. "We will get you warm. Then we are going to walk back through what you remember. You are not alone in this." "I should have remembered sooner," Evelyn said. "You just did," Harrington said. "That is what matters." A squad car took the curb as more units funneled into the block. Neon flared off the wet pavement like spilled paint. The city had its own heartbeat. In the puddles, red and blue drifted like jellyfish. Harrington moved to the radio and listened again. The DJ said the melody had been a public submission. Anonymous, something from a box of tapes found in an estate sale. Harrington filed the detail. Anonymous was a word that got people dead. Linda kept Evelyn talking softly and without pushing her to break. The memory was a hallway. You do not kick down the door to get through. You wait for the light to come on. Evelyn mentioned a bitter taste and a rubber smell. She remembered a truck horn. She remembered a city bus sighing at a stop. She remembered his breath between whistle notes, short as if he was timing something. A uniform approached Harrington with a disposable rain cap and a question in his eyes. The uniform said a neighbor had seen a man standing across the street for a long time. Hands in pockets, hood up, not moving in the rain. Harrington scanned the edges. The rain softened the world, but there are always edges. He saw a figure by the bus shelter, blurred through the curtain of water. The man stepped back, and the faintest thread of a whistle teased the air between thunder rumbles. "Police," Harrington said. The figure turned, not hurrying, as if friction had been removed from his life. He drifted away into the guttering dark. Harrington started across the street, but Linda put a hand on Evelyn's arm and called out. "He's here," Evelyn said. "He's here, I can feel it." Harrington pushed forward, but the figure rounded the corner and was gone. The rain swallowed footprints. A bus pulled to the shelter and hissed open. 5 wet passengers stepped off. No metronome tattoo among them. The radio in the store coughed the melody again, soft and mocking. They had a survivor, a tune, and a shadow that did not leave prints. They also had a city full of corners. The night folded in on itself, and for one clockless breath, time felt like something you could run out of. By morning, the rain had calmed to a drizzle that slicked the neon into long, bruised streaks. Harrington and Linda crossed Los Angeles from Koreatown to Echo Park to a place beneath a freeway that smelled like oil and old decisions. They worked methodical, pulling on threads without tangling them, while the city pretended it could forget the night. Rico Alvarez met them behind a diner that served coffee as if it was penance. Rico was a street informant with one eye on the free world and one on his next favor. He had a knit cap pulled low and fingers that never stilled. "I heard that whistle, too," Rico said. "Folks down at the Blue Lark started calling him a ghost with a tune. They say he is a musician who got wrecked by the business and turned monster. They call him the Whistler because, well, he does that." "Names," Harrington said. "No real name," Rico said. "A few talk about a guy who used to play a thing called Black Lake Waltz. Haunted, if you buy that kind of talk. He vanished when a scandal took him out. I can ask deeper if you keep me clean." "Stay vertical and you get to ask," Harrington said. Rico grinned like a man who had borrowed someone else's life. He tapped the side of his nose and drifted off between parked cars. Linda watched him go and shook her head. "He is a maybe who wants to be a certainty," Linda said. "He is a bridge for now," Harrington said. They drove to a small club on Sunset with a faded sign and a door that stuck. Inside, a bartender with hands like paddles kept polishing glasses. A woman at the far end smoked and pretended she was not listening. The bartender pointed without making them ask. Maya Lopez poured neat drinks for men who liked to pretend they had made peace with their choices. She had a voice that carried without shouting. "You are looking for the song," Maya said. "It showed up on the jukebox last week, 3rd page, track 16, no label. Someone keeps feeding Bills to hear it 3 or 4 times in a row." "Who?" Linda said, tall, hoodie. "Never takes the hood down," Maya said. "He pays cash and leaves before the tune ends. I do not know if he is your man. I do know the melody gives the regulars a colder beer than they ordered." Harrington stared at the old jukebox. He traced the rectangle where the new track sheet had been slipped in. He felt the tug of something he had misplaced years ago. After they left the club, he opened the trunk of the sedan and pulled a dented cigar tin from beneath an emergency kit. Inside lay a matchbook with a sketch of a heron and the words "Blue Lark" in faded blue. He had collected it on a case that never closed. On the inside flap was scrawled 3 letters and 2 words in his own hand, SV Black Lake. Linda read it and did not ask how long it had been there. "You never told me about SV, Linda said. "I never told myself," Harrington said. His phone buzzed. "Unknown number," he answered. "Detective," a voice said. Fear filled every syllable. "This is Maya. Do not call me back. He is not alone. The lab knows the notes. Someone in your house is singing along." The line died. Linda stared at the phone. "She said the lab knows the notes," Linda said. Harrington's jaw went tight. Internal corruption was a rumor that hung around every big department like old smoke. Given the song, the rumors felt like a chorus. "Something else," Linda said. "I pulled chain of custody logs from last month's assaults. One lab tech requested unusual access. It could be nothing." "Who?" Harrington said. "Alyssa Grant," Linda said. "She is a rock. That is what everyone says." The city's drizzle turned to rain again, as if it had been listening. The idea that the melody had a friend inside their walls made the room tilt. Harrington folded the matchbook shut and slipped it back into the tin. The case from the past reached for him with a cold hand. The lab was bright and smelled like bleach and coffee. A church of evidence where faith was supposed to be placed in process, not in people. Dr. Alyssa Grant met them in a white coat that made her look like an oath. She had short hair and clear eyes and a habit of answering questions before they were asked. "You are here about Evelyn Carter," Alyssa said. "We are running trace from her sweater and under her nails. You will know when I know." "We are also here about access logs," Linda said. "You requested unusual pulls on cases tied to the Whistler." "We were reworking degraded audio from scene cams," Alyssa said. "I requested extra time with the software. We are all trying to catch him, remember?" Harrington watched her without blinking. He did not like being impatient in a place that required patience. He nodded and kept his tone level. "We appreciate the hustle," Harrington said. "We will be asking for logs and backups. We want everything clean." Alyssa's smile thinned. "Of course," Alyssa said. "If you think I am your problem, you are missing the song entirely." They stepped out with boxes under Linda's arm and paper receipts in Harrington's pocket. In the hallway, Linda touched his sleeve. "You think she is dirty," Linda said. "I think everyone sings to someone," Harrington said. "We have to find who she sings to." They followed Maya's fear through calls to managers and late-night messages to club owners. A pattern surfaced. A burner number moved through corners of the city where you could rent a conscience by the hour. The number hit one of Rico's circles. They found Rico behind a liquor store, smoking wet cigarettes under a leaking gutter. "I have the name," Rico said. "Not his real name, but something they whisper. Vale. Like the valley, but with an E. He used to be a big deal on a small stage. He wrote that Black Lake thing. If it is him, he has friends who hate the badge." "Bring me more than a whisper," Harrington said. Rico lifted his hands and tried to smile. He glanced past them at a sedan idling across the street with fogged windows. "Do not sell me to anyone," Rico said. "I do not want to whistle the wrong tune." That night, a sergeant handed them a trash bag full of paper confetti from a lab bin. Someone had shredded documents in a hurry. Harrington and Linda sat in a small conference room and built the puzzle back as if they could press time flat. Coffee went cold, fingers cramped. Little strips became larger strips, and then a page. Linda leaned back as real fear flared in her chest. "These are lab reports," Linda said. "Adjusted submission times, swapped sample numbers, signed by Alyssa." Another sheet knit itself together. A typed email stood revealed. The addressee line had no comfort to give. It did not read a name. It read a handle. The subject said, "Delivery." The body said, "He will not be moved without warning." They assembled a photo that had been cut into quarters. When the pieces finally found home, Rico Alvarez stared back at them from a greasy diner booth, shaking hands with a man whose face tilted down just enough to hide. The man's left hand showed, casual on the table. At the base of the thumb, a small metronome ticked in black lines. Linda pushed her chair back until it hit the wall. "I never imagined betrayal could come from within our own ranks," Linda said. Harrington looked from the photo to the shredded logs to the hallway where the lab waited, like a bright lie. He thought of the matchbook in his pocket. He thought of the whistle that rang notes inside his old mistakes. "We arrest Alyssa first," Linda said. "No," Harrington said. "We watch her. We see who comes to collect." He turned off the overhead light. In the dim, the photo became something colder than paper. The metronome tattoo gleamed like the smallest clock in the world, keeping a cruel beat. They shadowed Alyssa Grant for 2 days without sleeping properly. She went to work, to a gym where no one smiled, and to a small restaurant in Atwater where the specials changed at the pace of a metronome. She made one detour that mattered. She drove to a storage unit in Lincoln Heights and stayed 12 minutes. When she left, Harrington and Linda cut the lock with a warrant and stepped into dust and silence. Inside, the unit held boxes labeled with years in thick black marker. Harrington opened one and found newspapers. He found clippings stapled to clippings. He found a face he had seen in poor light in better times. The headline read, "Celebrated musician tumbles from grace." The man's name was Sebastian Vale. He had been the kind of talent that makes small rooms feel like churches. The scandal had been messy and never fully true, a hurricane of accusation and spun evidence involving a promoter and a fight that put a man in a coma. Charges had been filed. Charges had been dropped. The damage had settled like ash anyway. Linda turned a page and found a photograph of Harrington from years ago, younger, jaw set, jacket collar up. The caption said, "Veteran detective questions Vale in assault probe." Beside it lay a stack of internal memos, photocopies of files Harrington had thought were buried. He scanned a letter with his own signature and a blot of coffee in the corner. "I recommended accelerated charges on Vale," Harrington said. "We thought we had the right man," Linda said. "I thought fast and shallow," Harrington said. The promoter was lying. The lab was leaning. I did not fight it hard enough. Linda pointed to a note paperclip to the memos. It was a page of music, hand notations in the margins. At the bottom, in cramped script, someone had written Black Lake Waltz. A date from decades ago sat in the corner. The handwriting matched a signature on a fan letter from a box across the aisle. The letters were desperate and polite. They were addressed to a mother named Ruth Vale. They spoke of waiting out the storm. They spoke of watching doors close without making a sound. Alyssa did the lab work on Vale back then, Linda said. She was junior, but she was there. The storage unit told a story of a life pushed into a corner until only a song could come out. Harrington stood still while the air thinned. "I helped build the corner," Harrington said. A call came in. Another victim. Same pattern. Same careful hand. The tune had been heard by two neighbors through an apartment wall. The whistler had tightened his timeline in response to pressure. He was making them chase while he kept time. They drove to a part of the river where warehouses had windows like dead eyes. A man with keys led them through an iron door that stuck. The place smelled like damp cardboard and regret. They moved slow. They found a chair, a clean coil of rope, a scrap of cloth with a faint pattern like a nightclub carpet. "Listen," Linda said. Harrington listened. It was there, somewhere beyond the walls. The echo of a tune that did not need instruments, just breath and anger. They followed it like a thread through rooms until it ran them back out into the alley and down a block to a door with a brass handle worn smooth. Inside, a jazz club slept in the dark. Once it had been a palace of blue light and smoke. Now it was dust and silence and a stage that remembered. Harrington crossed the floor, his steps loud because everything else had stopped making noise. On the stage, a horn lay in a cracked case. On the piano, a water stain formed the shape of a lake. "Sebastian," Harrington said. A shape stood at the back of the room, between two pillars, tall, still. The hood was down, and the face was older than the last photo the world had seen. The man turned, but only enough for Harrington to catch the angle of his jaw and the set of his mouth. The man lifted his left hand. The small metronome tattoo flashed like a wink, a breath, a whistle. 3 notes fell clean into the space and made it a trap. "Detective," the man said, "calm as a storm front. You always love the wrong doors." Harrington took a step toward him. The man slid sideways into the shadow as if the dark had been made for him. Linda reached the wing but found only air and an open service exit. The door swung back on its hinges, slow as a pendulum. He was there, and then he was not. The echo of the whistle lingered like smoke in a room that could never quite be cleared. The storm returned with a violence it had been saving. Lightning ripped ragged holes in the sky and sewed them shut again with rain. The call came fast and raw. Evelyn Carter had been taken from her apartment. The power was cut. A neighbor on the landing had heard a tune and a voice that sounded like forgiveness when spoken by someone who did not know the word. Harrington and Linda moved with an urgency that did not need words. They traced the path through city cameras and a tip from a tow truck driver who had seen a van parked by the river. The van led them to a warehouse near the rail lines with broken windows and a tin roof that made the rain sound like 1,000 fists. Inside, the space was lit by a single work lamp and a string of dim bulbs. Evelyn sat in a chair with her hands bound but her eyes awake. The whistler stood behind her with his head tilted, as if listening to a distant metronome. He wore no mask. He had a musician's hands and a face lined with scars of weather and time. "Sebastian Vale," Harrington said. "Names are cages," Vale said. "You should know. You put me in one and threw away the key." "Let her go," Linda said. "She is here because she remembers the most important thing," Vale said. "The song is not mine anymore. You made it what it is. You gave it a reason." "You were a celebrated musician," Harrington said. "The case went wrong. We should have fixed it. We did not. That is on me. It does not give you this." "You think you understand cost," Vale said. "They took the air from my lungs. The labels, the police, the lab with its clean hands. Your lab fed the wolves. I slept under stages until the only bed was this city itself. When I rediscovered the melody, it wanted blood to go with it." Linda edged along a stack of pallets. The roof popped with rain. Harrington kept Vale's eyes with his own. "Alyssa gave you evidence paths," Harrington said. "She gave you windows to slip through. Why, Sebastian?" "Because she was made of the same regret," Vale said. "She bent to a broken thing once and found out how easy it is to do it again. We are all playing to the same bad sheet." "Let her go," Linda said. Vale leaned closer to Evelyn and spoke softly to her. "You remembered the metronome," Vale said. "That is how you lived. You deserve that. You are not them." Evelyn looked at Harrington and shook her head once, steady with fear but not broken by it. "I can hold," Evelyn said. Harrington pulled his phone slowly. He had a recording from the jukebox. He pressed play and set the phone down on a crate behind him. The tune spilled into the room, a little off, compressed by cheap speakers. Vale stiffened and cocked his head. His fingers twitched, ready to correct. Artists cannot help fixing a wrong note. "That is not how it goes," Vale said. "I know," Harrington said. Linda moved as Vale stepped instinctively toward the sound, one hand lifting to shape the melody with the air. Harrington cut the work lamp with a flick of a switch he had spotted on the way in. Darkness surged. Rain smashed the roof so hard it became white noise. In the sudden confusion, Harrington went left and Linda went right. A short, brutal clash ignited. Vale swung, catching Linda in the shoulder with a tool he had kept under the chair. Linda fell against a crate with a cry she crushed into a grunt. "I am good," Linda said. Harrington took the hit to his forearm to protect his face. He felt old bones complain and ignored them. He drove forward with the quiet economy of a Marine who had been taught to finish what he started, but had learned later how much mercy weighed. He wrapped Vale and drove him into a concrete pillar. The impact took breath from both men. "It ends here," Harrington said. "Not for me," Vale said. "For everyone else," Harrington said. Vale tried to whistle, but the breath stuttered through him. Harrington caught his wrist, pinning the left hand with the metronome tattoo to the pillar. Linda stood, bleeding and braced, and put 2 tight rounds into the ceiling to kill the light and the confidence of the room. "Police," Linda said. "Drop it and live." Vale sagged. He stared past Harrington at the phone on the crate. The tune played on, imperfect and insistent. His eyes shone with something that looked like the memory of stages and applause and a mother who had believed in the boy with the horn. "Do not give them my song," Vale said. "You gave it away," Harrington said. Harrington cuffed him while Linda kept a bead on the space where fear might come from. Evelyn sagged with relief as Linda cut the cords and eased her up with her good hand. "You are safe now," Linda said. "I heard it wrong," Evelyn said. "That is why I survived." I remembered where the notes bent. He always corrected them. Outside, squad cars painted the night with relief. Paramedics took Linda in a flurry of blankets and competence. Harrington sat on the bumper of a cruiser, rain in his hair and the old matchbook in his pocket, feeling heavier than metal. Rico Alvarez was in cuffs 2 blocks away, caught trying to slip out of the neighborhood with enough cash to start another life. Alyssa Grant sat in an interview room by dawn, eyes hollow, evidence stacking on the table between her and her choices. Justice did what it could with the broken parts that people brought to it. Later, in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and hope, Harrington stood by Linda's bed. She had a sling and a look that warned him not to get sentimental on her time. You did not quit on him or on you, Linda said. I should have fixed it decades ago, Harrington said. You fixed what you could reach, Linda said. He nodded and took a breath he had not taken in years. Evelyn returned to her apartment with a new lock and a radio she kept unplugged. On a morning quiet enough to hear your own thoughts, she stepped onto her balcony and did not fear the sound of a tune. She believed she could survive its echo. The city eased back into pretending it had never been afraid of a melody. Headlines turned to other storms. Harrington stood on the precinct roof that night and listened to the freeway hum and a siren far away. He thought of a lake drawn in water stains on an old piano and of a boy who had written a waltz without knowing what it would cost. When the past sings its darkest refrain, each note is a clue. He had learned the lesson late and hard, but he had learned it. The whistle did not own the night anymore. It lingered, sure, a faint line through the noise, a question hanging over the city like the tail of a cloud. Can scars close around the things that made them, or do they hold an echo forever? He did not know. He only knew that the melody had lost its weapon and found its ending.